WCVB Channel 5 Boston with our partners, the Boston Globe, WBUR, and the UMass Boston McCormick Graduate School. This is a Commitment 2021 special, Boston's final mayoral debate. And now, tonight's moderator, News Center 5's Ed Harding.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's debate, the final one in this historic election here in the future of Boston. One of the women in Studio B with us tonight here in Needham will be the next mayor of the city. They are City Councilor Annissa Essaibi-George and City Councilor Michelle Wu. We do thank you both for being with us here tonight. Spanish language closed caption service is available for this debate. Instructions are running at the bottom of your screen. El servicio de subtítulos en español está disponible para este debate. Las instrucciones están en su pantalla. We have three panelists asking most of the questions tonight. Tiziana Deering, the host of Radio Boston on WBUR, Boston Globe columnist Adrienne Walker, and my co-host from On the Record here on Channel 5, our political reporter Janet Wu. The candidates will, and you're familiar with the rules, the candidates will have 1 minute for responses tonight, 30 seconds for rebuttals. They are encouraged to exchange ideas, so we do open that door. Random draws determine the podium position, the order of closing statements, and who gets the first question, and that goes to Annissa Essaibi-George, and it comes from our Janet Wu. Jan?
So we're going to start for what we hope is going to be the road out of the pandemic. City government now mandates workers either get vaccinated and show proof of vaccination, with few exceptions, test regularly, or they risk losing their jobs. As the next mayor, you would be actually facing the decision to actually fire these workers. Are you prepared to fire a fireman, a police officer, or any of the other city workers that don't comply?
Well, first, thank you all for having us here this evening and for this final debate in the selection and the election of the next mayor of Boston. I'm prepared to do this work on behalf of the people of the city of Boston and in partnership with the people of the city of Boston. We know we've got about 800 city workers who have not fulfilled their commitment to the vaccine mandate. That mandate is important for the health and well-being of our city, of our city's people, and of our entire workforce, all 18,000 employees. And I'm grateful to have the endorsement and the support of so many of them. And I stand behind that mandate. We've got a lot of work to do to build trust, to build relationship, to share information and education with our city's workforce and our city's residents across the board. So yes, I'm prepared to do that, but I'm more prepared today and on day one of my administration to work in partnership with all of our city's workers to make sure that they have the information and that we've built trust and partnership.
Ms. Wu, the same question to you.
Thank you so much for having us here. I'm grateful to everyone tuning in tonight to talk about the future of our city, and certainly the pandemic and our response to it and the need to continue leading in ending this pandemic is front and center as we're headed into the colder months. As mayor, I'll make sure that we are supporting our city workers in closing the vaccination gap. We need to ensure that there's not only every resource available for everyone to get vaccinated, but the paid leave to recover from any impacts, and also the resources available so that we are not putting families in difficult choices. I stand by this vaccine mandate because we need to make sure that every single worker is protected within City Hall and across all of our city buildings, as well as the general public who we are serving. City services are critical to the day-to-day lives of all of our residents, so we want to make sure that we're doing that with safety and following the guidelines so that we can end this pandemic.
So you are vowing to fire those who don't comply?
I stand behind the mandate and will make sure that we uphold it and take every effort to support those in complying with it, but ultimately we do need to have a fully vaccinated workforce.
All right, let's stay with pandemic recovery, and you'll get the answer first on this one, Councilor Wu. What's the single biggest obstacle to business pandemic recovery? And along with that, the most important lever that you can actually affect to aid in that business recovery, and how quickly can you do something about that?
Boston's economy is built from being a city that is welcoming, with lots of foot traffic, lots of people coming to visit and enjoy our downtown and our neighborhoods. A couple months ago, I served a lunch shift on one of our food trucks in the downtown area near South Station. It was barely a trickle because so many of our downtown office buildings are still empty. Our economy is changed forever from this pandemic. And as we're balancing remote work with the need for businesses to reopen, we need to support our workers and our businesses in doing so. Let's get childcare into every vacant downtown office building so that workers can have a better choice when deciding where to work. Let's make sure we're elevating arts and culture and restaurants so that we give people a reason to come back in person. And most of all, we need to ensure that all of the challenges our economy was facing before COVID, transportation access, housing costs, that we are working on fixing this so that Boston continues to be the leading place to work and live.
Councilor Essaybi-George.
Our small businesses have suffered tremendously over this last 20 months during the pandemic, and many of them were struggling before because they didn't have access to the appropriate resources that they needed to succeed. I'm committed to investing a significant dollar amount from our ARPA funds to support small businesses, both in their survival and their eventual success. Day one of my administration, on swearing-in day, I will hold a town hall with our small businesses across our city. Their struggle has been real. Their failures and struggles have been felt, both for the families that own those businesses and the communities that depend on them. As mayor of this city, we need to make sure that our small business owners, especially our business owners of color, have access to the resources they need to thrive going forward and access the new innovation and the new opportunity that has come from this very difficult time. As your mayor, this is to the small business owners out there, I'm here to work with you for the future.
Councilor, what is a significant dollar amount?
So we've looked at a couple of different pools as it relates to the ARPA funds. I've had a significant commitment around our Black community, $100 million, as it relates to our equity, inclusion, and justice plan. Some of that will go to support our small businesses. I've also committed an additional $50 million of city funds to support small businesses across our city. We know so many of them have struggled. We've got to look for opportunities for relief and for growth.
Let's turn to housing. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, Boston is in the midst of an economic boom that has priced many people, especially people of color and young people, out of the city. While the same pattern has played out in other cities, few, if any, have seem to have successfully addressed it. Give me specific steps you would take as mayor to make housing more affordable. Let's start with Councilor Essaybi-George.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We've gotten used to how we do this back and forth, so grateful for the question, because across our city I've heard from our city's families, from young people to our seniors, to our veterans, to those dealing with housing instability, how important housing is here in the city. I've led the work on the Boston City Council to ensure that our families experiencing homelessness and housing instability, especially those within the Boston Public Schools, have access to the resources they need. I've been a founding part of an effort around the Family-Led Stability Pilot that works in direct connection with our Boston Public Schools, creating opportunities for housing close to home. We have to, as a city, build more affordable and truly affordable housing in our city. We also need to ensure that there are first-time home buyer efforts underway and first-in-your-family, first-generation home buying opportunities here in this city. I've committed $1 million to Maha's Stash program for down payment assistance and have committed to the $200 million through the GBIO efforts.
Councilor Wu.
This past Saturday, my team and I were crisscrossing the city. We started our day at Brothers in Mattapan Square, went to a cookout in Via Victoria, a forum in Nubian Square, and ended the day at a house party in Savin Hill. Across the city, every neighborhood, it is clear that housing is on people's minds. The status quo is not working. We need to ensure that as we recover from this pandemic, housing stability and boosting home ownership is at the core of our recovery. I'll make sure that we are fighting for the resources to build affordable housing right away. Look at city-owned property, integrate affordable housing into that redevelopment, streamline our processes so that we will expedite affordable housing projects and move through our systems faster. And I'm the only candidate on this stage that supports rent stabilization, which has worked to keep people in their homes in cities across the country. I'll go to our partners on Beacon Hill, figure out how we can get the resources to protect our families right away while using every bit of resources we have at the city level to ensure that we are doing our part immediately.
Councilor Essaybi-George, would you like to rebut that?
I'd love to rebut that. Rent stabilization is rent control. That will directly impact our families who have worked to buy a 3-family home, a 2-family home in this city. Rent control will freeze rents at very high levels and actually do the opposite in what we need to do here in the city of Boston around greater affordability. Rent control and rent stabilization push families further and further out of the city, increase rents, and create less opportunity for greater affordability to be created here in Boston.
Councilor Wu.
To say that giving city government the power to really push to protect residents and stabilize our rents would actually make rents go up insults the intelligence of our residents. There are many units across the city already that are restricted at affordable rates because city dollars have gone into funding these units. We need to make sure that rent stabilization, as working in other cities, is an option as we continue to do our part to build more affordable housing, streamline our processes, and also boost home ownership.
But isn't rent stabilization something that ultimately would have to be done at the state level, in the State House? And how would you get it done?
This is a moment where we need collaboration along every part of our government. I'm proud to stand with elected officials and community leaders representing city, state, county, and federal government who are all committed to making sure we move quickly in this moment. This is going to be a collaborative partnership, and I'll go to our partners on Beacon Hill to have these conversations. We are all now focused on ensuring housing stability will be the foundation of our recovery. And in the meantime, city government has much to do already. We'll use funds to boost home ownership. We will increase down payment assistance. We will use city property, get that activated with affordable housing, and ensure that we are simplifying our processes so that affordable housing will move more quickly.
Rent control is not the answer for the city of Boston. It has been tried and it has failed. When we talk about the status quo, rent control is the status quo. We need to increase investment in affordable housing in our city. We need to make sure that our seniors, that our veterans, that our city's residents with disabilities have the opportunity to live in this city and live affordably. We need to invest in our public housing, which for too long, both the city, the state, and the federal government have walked away from. As mayor, I'm going to invest in creating more opportunities for affordable housing, and I'm going to do that in partnership with our city's residents.
Rent control has been eliminated since 1994 in the Commonwealth. How is it the status quo?
It has been tried and it has failed. When we think about innovation, when we think about new opportunity, when we think about bold vision for our city, we've got to work with our residents to create more opportunity for home ownership. That solves displacement and gentrification. We've got to create greater assistance around down payment. We've got to make sure that our city's residents have the tools they need to buy their own home and live in this city.
Any final thoughts, Councillor Wu, before we move on?
Look, I agree. I fully agree with the councillor that the status quo isn't working, especially when it comes to housing. But if we had had the tools of rent stabilization, we would not be where we are today. And so I will make sure that I'm fighting for every possible tool, every possible power that city government can have to ensure we are keeping people in their homes. This is a matter of racial justice, of economic justice. This is directly impacting the future of our city and who's able to stay and thrive here.
Let's move on to another issue that you just brought up a few minutes ago, Councillor Wu. Early in your career, you were identified as the city councilor with a child on her hip. You brought your baby to City Hall for hearings and meetings. Most young parents don't have that flexibility. It's looking unlikely that Congress will be able to fund comprehensive child care program as many of the progressives in our Massachusetts delegation were hoping. Will Boston, under your leadership, take on the cost of providing comprehensive coverage for families? Which families will you try to cover first, and how would you pay for it?
Childcare is absolutely going to be a top priority in my administration. Both of my boys were born after I joined the council, and my time as a working mom, pushing a big double stroller, getting on the T, trying to get to childcare and then get to work, has given me a lens into just how much our families are juggling. It is time to deliver universal pre-K through the Boston Public Schools and work with all of the childcare providers across our city, where city government can provide a streamlined access point to enroll our families into these spots, to provide that clear information on where those seats are, and also to invest and stabilize this workforce. The average childcare worker in Boston is paid 1/3 of the salary of an elementary school teacher. $25,000 a year is not sustainable. Let's use every tool that we have through our vocational education, through our public school system, and through the tools of city government to partner with state government and ensure that we are investing in this workforce, taking down barriers to access, and coordinating the entire suite of options through city government.
But how would you pay for it?
Well,
and how much do you think you're willing to pay for it?
There's a landmark bill at the State House right now that would cap the costs of childcare annually for residents. I'll continue working with the State House delegation and federal delegation to provide the resources, but it's been estimated that somewhere in the $36 to $50 million range is what it would take to finish closing the gap for 3-year-olds in our system. That is the immediate charge. I'll make sure we deliver universal pre-K for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and then work for an affordable sliding scale charge for those from birth to age 3.
Councilor Sabi George, do you support her idea?
Certainly support her idea. It's so important that we are embracing and supporting early education and childcare, both in our system as it relates to universal pre-K. The UPK program needs to be further invested in. There's also Common Start legislation up at the State House that I have endorsed. We also need to work in partnership with our child care and early care providers, especially in home-based programs. So many are led and developed by women and women of color, and they have continued to suffer, especially during this pandemic. We've got to fix the reimbursement process as it relates to subsidized childcare and support especially those women who are operating small businesses. Childcare and early ed needs to be the focus both for us here at the city and supporting our families and we've seen the impact on essential workers every single day, but we've got to work with our partners at the State House as well. We've got ARPA funds, and those ARPA funds that I want to dedicate in a large way to small businesses should be invested as well in childcare.
But most of the cost, you're hoping that the state will pick up the cost.
Well, I'm certainly hopeful that we can do that in partnership because it is both a city issue and a state issue when we think about the economic engine that Boston is and the number of frontline essential employees that also have family burdens. And not that a family is a burden. My husband and I have got 4 great kids, a 17-year-old now and triplets who are 15. We've got work to do to support our families who need to go to work every single day and their important role in our workforce.
So staying with that issue, do we have a longer-term structural problem in wages? You've both talked about compensation. So the question is, do we have a long-term gap between what workers need to earn, what governments are willing to pay, and what families can pay? And what is a long-term solution to close that gap? Councilor Sabi George, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, and part of that long-term solution is wealth building for our families, making sure that our city's residents and our families have opportunities in the workforce to make more than just a living wage, to build their skill sets and earn a higher income, to put more money in the bank, to put more money in investments, to put more money towards buying that home and stabilizing family and children, and also investing in childcare. We have to look every single day for ways to drive down that cost, but also make sure that our childcare and early ed providers are making as well a living salary and more than that. We know, I'm a former high school teacher. I didn't want to teach the babies, but we think about the work that's happening in those classrooms. And childcare and early ed is early education across both of those spectrums. Those that are providing those services and doing that very essential work for our families across the city need to be paid for those and paid in parity, especially to educators across our city.
Councilor Wu, same question to you.
There's absolutely a gap, and this is where we need the public sector to step in and invest. Boston is the home of this kind of investment and innovation. Nearly 400 years ago, this became the home of the first free public elementary school anywhere in the country, the Mather School in Dorchester. And we know now, several hundred years later, we're still waiting to see that investment to make it possible from birth to age 5. I'll make sure that we're reducing turnover costs by helping to stabilize the childcare workforce. Part of what drives the costs up is that it is such an unsustainable career right now that there is turnover, which then means there's more administrative costs of recruitment and retention and hiring more educators. We can use the platforms through our vocational education program, Boston Public Schools, to help support that professional development. We also should be directly investing in the programs to make sure there's parity across the curriculum, across the salaries and the wages and the hours. And then most of all, let's make sure that we are providing equity in the seats across the city. The neighborhoods that have had the greatest number of young children actually have seen, in some cases, 30% of seats close down as centers have closed and we've not replaced them. That's the job of city government, so that we can allocate those funds equitably.
Are you ready for a little lightning round to pick up the pace a little bit? We're going to change it here. These are short questions. Yes or no is great. One sentence is great. No more than that, though. Just one, and boom, we're out of here. Let's stick with education. If Boston schools reach 80% vaccination rate, should masks be dropped? Councilor Wu, start with you.
No.
No. Councilor Sabi George.
Masks will not be removed this year in the Boston Public Schools.
Period. No. As a child of immigrants, what is a signature habit or custom that you've adopted from that culture? Councilor George, let me start with you.
Oh, I think an interest in lots of different foods. Being from a Polish mother and a Tunisian father, we've got both the savory and the spicy.
Councilor Wu.
We love to celebrate our holidays and spend a lot of time with the family in Chinatown. I also always get different English idioms confused because English is not my first language.
Very good.
This is a question for Councilor Wu. If there is a perennial frustration with city government, it's over the performance of Boston's public schools, which has been described as being in a state of constant crisis. In just the past year or so, we've had 2 schools committee chairs resign, fights between the BTU and the superintendent, and renewed threats from the state to pursue receivership if Boston can't get its act together. What will you do as mayor to finally fix our schools?
I have skin in the game on this one and wake up every day thinking about the future of our young people and our schools as I send my 4- and 6-year-old off to BPS. I also am on my 2nd round of being a BPS mom, having raised my younger sister through middle school and high school in our district as her legal guardian. I've visited every single Boston Public High School to spend time listening to our educators, our school leaders, school nurses, and young people. We need stability in the district. First and foremost, that means having a clear COVID recovery plan to ensure that we're closing the vaccination gap and addressing the crisis of mental health that is still very much on our young people and our educators after such trauma that we have lived through with the pandemic. We need to then move to bigger picture issues, closing the gap for early education, ensuring that we are fixing up our facilities and crumbling buildings for the spaces that our students deserve, and also focusing on vocational education, clear standards across the district so we have high expectations and high supports.
Same question for me, I imagine. As a former classroom teacher, and I'm so proud to have spent 13 years in the classroom, as a Boston Public Schools grad myself and parent to 4 BPS students, as well as the council's chair on the Committee of Education, I've spent a great deal of my personal and professional time talking about our schools and doing the work to make sure that we are improving the academic achievement and the support services that are in place for our kids across our district. I also have known for generations, mayor after mayor and candidate after candidate has said, I'll fix the Boston Public Schools, elect me. We'll elect a classroom teacher and a BPS mom and a BPS graduate to fix the Boston Public Schools. It's around getting our transportation budget right. It's about special education services. It's about high school redesign, grade reconfigurations, making sure that we are truly investing in early literacy across all of our schools, and engaging our families in the very important work of educating our city's kids. I'm excited to get to this work, and I'm ready to do it.
I'd like to play a tape for you. It's going to be a question from someone who's in the city, and someone has a question for both of you. And as you know, the UMass Boston McCormick Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies is one of the partners in tonight's debate. So the next question comes from a student of that school. Take a listen, and then Councilor Essaibi-George will start with you, but you both get a shot at it here.
My name is Tim Cronin. I'm a graduate student at UMass Boston's McCormick School, joining you from Columbia Point in Dorchester. This is a question for both candidates. Both of you list climate change as an important issue within your public platforms, specifically environmental justice and green jobs. This is a key issue for young Bostonians, but to do it right requires significant public investments. What concrete steps do you propose to raise new revenue equitably or to partner with the state to find new sources of funding? Thank you.
All right, Tim, thank you. Councilor Essaibi-George.
Well, it's a very important question. I'm glad that it's been asked, because climate action and environmental justice for the city of Boston is so important, and it's critically important to make sure that we are including our communities who have been left out of the conversation for too long. When we think about our communities of color in particular, they need a seat at the table to talk about the raising asthma rates in East Boston that I saw firsthand as a teacher and a coach, to talk about the need for greater tree canopy in our city, especially our communities that have these heat islands. And then we have to talk about the water rise. At Columbia Point, you see it, and storm surges and in weather changes, that rising level. I'm not sure, though, the dollar amount that we need to invest, but we have to act fast and make sure that our city's people have access to those jobs. That's why I've committed to a strategic plan to be rolled out within my first 100 days around Madison Park. Among the jobs that we should be training our residents for in the very near future include the green economy. We've got work to do, and I want to do it in partnership.
So specifically in that plan.
I don't have a dollar amount, but
no, just in the plan.
Yeah.
Give me 2 things in the plan that would be actual hands-on things that you do.
No, we've got to work with our young people and our city's residents around accessing those jobs through Madison Park. When we think about the environmental changes that are happening and the opportunity for entrance into the workforce, we can do that through Madison Park. And then we need to make sure that these conversations, that this work, that these plans are happening in our neighborhoods, especially in our communities of color that for far too long have just been listening to the white, affluent, suburban community member in what should be happening here in Boston. We also have to work in partnership with other cities and towns and other coastal states on a coordinated response.
Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Tim, for this question. And I want to thank all the young people who have been organizing and fighting for action on climate justice. Last fall, I was standing on Morrissey Boulevard right outside Tim's school there on a high tide day, sunny skies, clouds, blue sky, and I was almost up to my knees in water because of the high tide. Climate change is here now. My son is 6 years old. Every single year that he's been alive on this planet has been the hottest year ever on record. It is urgent and we need to take action. I'm proud to have introduced the very first city-level Green New Deal anywhere in the country and to have earned the endorsement of every single climate group that has gotten involved in this race because they stand behind a vision of climate justice as racial and economic justice. It is true that the costs will be significant, but the costs of delay and inaction far outweigh what we need to put in. Let's change our stormwater infrastructure funding so that we can start to have the funds assembled for resilient groundwater districts. Let's ensure that we are working for every single new development project to have funding going to resiliency. And let's be ready, because when the federal funding comes, those cities that are shovel ready with projects around transportation, around climate, around heat and street canopy and electric bus conversions, those will be the cities first in line for funds.
Sticking with the environmental theme, Councilor Essaibi George, this goes to you first. Acting Mayor Kim Janey has halted waterfront development, which took years to negotiate, as you know. She wants a new zoning plan for the harbor front that she says will be more environmentally sensitive and publicly accessible. As the wife of a developer as well as a city councilor, do you back her plan?
I don't actually back her plan in stopping the process as it's taken so many years. When we think about the work of community organizing, when we think about the work of building trust between our city and our city's residents, to have involved them in hundreds and hundreds of hours of process to then just walk away from that plan, I think is irresponsible government. Government should be working in partnership with our city's residents to do this work. Now, as a city, we do have to look at rezoning. As a city, we've got to look at some serious master planning and then look at rezoning and stick to those plans. We have to work in partnership with our city's residents, and when they come to the table hour after hour and night after night, I, as mayor, will be committed to that work and to the responsibility of serving them directly.
Councilor Wu, do you agree with her?
I disagree with my colleague here. I support the city's action and Mayor Janey's action to ensure that we are moving in the direction of climate resiliency, of accessibility and equity on a treasured part of the city, the waterfront, which truly should be open to all. Those years and years of meetings and process did not adequately capture residents' participation, and they certainly did not end up with a plan that reflected the dire crisis of climate that faces us. I will step up and make sure that our city is working on our development process and planning and zoning overall, but with the municipal harbor plan in particular, to provide a substitute plan that it brings in all of the stakeholders so that we will rise to the challenge and not repeat the mistakes of the seaport. We have the chance to deliver something that is truly exceptional, truly grounded in the future of our city, that will also make sure that the tourism and the opportunity for everyone to enjoy our waterfront is available to all.
Since you disagreed, Councilor George, would you like to jump in and say something else?
I think it's really important that when we as a city and as city leaders and as elected officials are building relationships and working with and leaning on community members to participate in a process, to tweak it on the edges might be fine, but to toss it out the window altogether is unfair to the work that was done on that plan in particular.
Councilor
Any
Wu,
final
response?
thoughts?
We can't afford to tweak around the edges in our city on almost any issue. And the way that our development process runs today is one of the most opaque, political, confusing anywhere in the country. It exacerbates just about every racial and economic disparity in Boston. I've put forward clear plans for how we would reform this process and ensure that we are planning for our long-term future, for affordability, for transportation access, for climate resiliency. That is a responsibility on our shoulders right now, to think big and take action, not nibble around the edges.
Specifically,
so I'd say
in
that
terms of the
harbor
plan,
front, what do you think should be done? What would your plan for the harbor front look like?
The heights are not reasonable that have been proposed, and we need to ensure that climate resiliency is first and foremost. There have been multiple plans put forward by stakeholders, including institutions in the area, including residents. Let's have a true planning process, not oriented around a proposal by one single developer, but around the community's views and how we think about the long-term safety and future of our city in such a climate vulnerable area.
But with the projects that are now actually started, should those be halted until something is decided at City Hall?
Nobody is talking about changing the rules midstream in terms of projects that are underway. This has been a project that was reversed by or halted by a court action, by a decision in our court system that recognized that the hours and length of process actually did not reflect the goals of the city and the goals of our residents. And so this is an opportunity for us to get it right, not just push things through and ensure we're just tweaking.
Councilor Savi-George.
So I want to say that Michelle's plan is to abolish the BPDA, to stop development and growth and opportunity for jobs in this city. I don't think that that's an appropriate plan when we think about the future of Boston, when we think about the opportunities to build more affordable housing, when we think about the opportunities to create and invest in a workforce that helps our city's residents build wealth. Abolishing, doing away with something that's midstream is not appropriate here in the city of Boston. We need fixes, we need reform, we need greater transparency in the process, but abolishing and stopping it altogether is inappropriate.
Councilor Wu.
It's a misunderstanding of the plan that I've laid out in 70-some pages over the last few years, from hours of conversations with developers, with residents, and with experts really across the country. We have the chance in Boston to plan and build for a city that is growing, that is sustainable, that is equitable. The surest way to stop development in Boston, to halt everything, is to keep doing what we're doing, to ignore the impacts of climate change and flooding, to continue ignoring the need for transportation infrastructure and affordability. The structures of the BPDA and our process as it currently stands is making Boston less affordable, is pushing people out. I'm ready to take the steps to change that.
I maybe misunderstood the term abolish. When we abolish the BPDA, we stop development in this city. We stop opportunities for growth. We stop opportunities for investment, for workforce development, and for more affordable housing in our city. There is no misunderstanding the term abolish.
I'd like to turn our attention now to the intersection of Melnia Cass Boulevard and Massachusetts Avenue, where today the city began removing tents and temporary shelters from the area after Acting Mayor Janey declared a public health emergency there. Meanwhile, Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins is readying a facility at the South Bay Correctional Center for treatment using involuntary commitment. Beginning with you, Councilor Savi-George, do you support what the Suffolk County Sheriff is doing, and would you work with that approach if elected?
So certainly want to explore innovation. When we think about the crisis at Mass and Cass, when we think about the crisis of homelessness and substance use disorder and mental illness, we have to think innovatively about this crisis. But locking up people who are not well, who are sick, is not the answer to this crisis. And I will say, taking down of tents did not start today. I spend quite a bit of time at Mass and Cass. It's been a big part of my work over these last 6 years. I was there this morning and I was there late this afternoon. There are more tents than ever. There is more violence than ever. We've had 6th and I think a 7th this morning murder at Mass and Cass. We have women who are regularly victimized and raped and human trafficked at Mass and Cass, and that crisis is touching so many neighborhoods across our city. I will move on that public health emergency. I'm grateful that the acting mayor took that after I made an updated Mass and Cass plan. We have to create a specialized zone in that community to make sure that we are able to coordinate resources to better help individuals who are not well.
So just to be really clear, you do not support Sheriff Tompkins' plan?
I don't support the plan specifically as it's written. I applaud the innovation and the creativity. We've got to think outside the box and how to assist people who are not well. We have hundreds of individuals today in tents. Not one tent has been moved. We have to protect the personal belongings of individuals who are struggling. We've got to decentralize services. We have to work with other communities for help. I am committed to not building a wall around the city of Boston, but working with other cities and towns to do more and rebuild the Long Island Bridge.
Councilor Wu, same question to you.
This is an urgent humanitarian crisis, past emergency level, and I'll make sure that we see the leadership, accountability, and coordination across all levels of government that are badly needed here. One of my very first hires is going to be a cabinet-level chief focused on the Mass and Cass area and our larger opiate crisis, homelessness, and mental health, reporting directly to me for full accountability. I'll make sure that we are connecting people to treatment and also retrofitting and looking at city-owned property, public property for supportive housing to get people out of the streets into shelter. When it comes to this specific plan that's been put forward, there are multiple components of it. The creation of a stabilization court to divert cases away from the criminal justice system is an important step, and one that has come with so much work, and my deep gratitude to Mayor Janey, our district attorney, attorney general, and so many others. When it comes to the piece about where we house folks who are needing treatment, we cannot have a criminalization lens. We must have a public health focused lens. And so what I take from this conversation is that there are facilities, empty buildings that are available. Let's make sure that we are not leading with law enforcement administering programs, but we have a public health lens and use every resource on the table.
And again, so am I understanding that you are not in support of what Sheriff Tompkins is preparing to do?
I support the actions to ensure that we are taking steps right away before it gets cold. Every single day that goes by, we're closer to winter and freezing temperatures, but let's make sure that this is a conversation where we have a public health focus and leadership rather than law enforcement leading the charge.
So staying with you, Councilor Wu, let's take a longer term view now, and I'm actually going to ask you to speak to the people of Quincy instead of the people of Boston, and address the people of Quincy directly about what you are asking them to do in terms of restoring a bridge to Long Island.
I do not support focusing our energy on building back a bridge. This has been a conversation that the City of Boston has had for 6-7 years now, and it is a major construction project in the order of $250 million plus that would require construction in the open ocean at the time scale of 4, 5, 10 years into the future. I welcome and will lead the way to ensure that all of our regional partners can be working together, because this is a crisis that truly affects all of us. But I want to make sure we're taking action in the 4-year mayoral term that I am seeking, not for a bridge project that is out of that frame. Let's use that funding, put it quickly to supportive housing and other structures, and activate Long Island through ferry service so that we can make sure we're also building a recovery campus back on the island.
And
So, I'm sorry, so you do not support the idea of even starting the process of building a bridge at this point so that it would be usable like maybe 5 or 10 years down the road?
I do not support putting our resources to focusing on the bridge. I'd move quickly to reactivating ferry service. We are in a legal process that is near completion, so we can finish that process, but our resources can be used much more urgently with much more impact for folks at Mass and Cass and across our city, for residents in the area, for small businesses, if we are looking to reactivate ferry service while we're moving quickly to retrofit supportive housing on city property.
Councilor Seiby-George, do you have a message for the people of Quincy?
So I've got a message first from Michelle. Because she's been stuck in conversation, she doesn't truly understand the crisis that is Mass and Cass. I have spent days, nights, and overnights at Mass and Cass, and our city's residents who are unsheltered are in crisis. They need help today, not the start of a conversation. This work under my administration will start day one. I am prepared not to just name that chief on day one, but to extend the public health emergency, to create this new zone for better coordination of city services. And I'm not going to walk away from the battle with Quincy. We need to do this work as a city in an effort to help so many people who could be my children, your children, are someone's loved ones that need help. It will be a bridge built under my administration. It will be an island for recovery service, built and renovated and fixed and repaired under my administration. It will also be an island that has access to ferry services. I will not give up the fight with Quincy to do this work. It is our people of this Commonwealth, of this region, who are suffering every day. We've got a lot of work to do, and I'm committed as mayor to do it.
Can that be done in a single, I'm sorry.
No, go.
Can that be
Yes,
done in a
it
single
can be.
mayoral
We've got
term?
incredible resources. We've got incredible minds. We can do a bridge hackathon and get this done. As Michelle mentions, we're near end of the legal litigation that's been brought on by Quincy to delay getting help to people who are suffering every single day. Makes me wildly crazy that we have not helped individuals who are in crisis, that we have not responded to the needs of a community, of business owners, of those going to work, of those frontline workers reaching out every single day to help individuals in crisis. We've got to move quickly on this, Michelle. We have to move quickly.
She's engaged you, Council. What is your response?
Look, I'm grateful for the councilor's passion on this and for the many, many meetings and conversations that she's been part of. We've both walked the streets in that area, both have been on many visits with the business owners, with residents, with healthcare providers there. Every conversation that I have is about taking urgent action. The bridge and the price tag of doing so means that we would be giving up and diverting our resources away from urgent action. I'm not willing to wait, and I'll ensure that we are moving quickly to provide the housing and health care and treatment that these residents need.
I'd like to continue because this crisis is so important. When I think about the doors I've knocked, the conversations I've had with our city's residents, they have very little interest in freeing the T. They have very little understanding of rent control, but they know the crisis that's Mass and Cass because every resident of the city has been touched by that crisis. I have done more than talk. I have done more than have conversations. We've worked to increase best clinicians who are working tirelessly every single day trying to access resources for individuals in crisis. I have worked with the outreach team on increasing their efforts for mobile sharps. I have worked with the Mass and Cass Task Force and the South End Task Force to do more for people who are suffering every day. Not conversations, hard work. It is hard work to lead this city, especially for our most vulnerable. We need to be committed to it, and I am.
Councilor Wu, if you have something to say?
Look, the situation at Mass and Cass has worsened over the last 6 and 7 years, and especially during this pandemic. We cannot wait to take immediate action. But we also must recognize that when people are finding themselves pushed over the edge, it is not just because of one incident that has happened. It is systems that have failed, systems that include the lack of affordable housing, systems that include transportation access that is too expensive and not reliable, systems that include our education and jobs that are available. I'm taking an approach that would address all of the issues that we need, and I'm not willing to say that this is not possible for Boston to get done. I won't underestimate our city and what we're capable of. I will fight for what our residents need and deserve.
These conversations are taking much too long for the men and women who are on the street tonight, for the women who will be raped tonight, for the individual who might be murdered tomorrow. We cannot wait for conversations. We've got to act. We've got to do the work. We've got to invest our city's resources, our manpower, our intellect to fix this problem once and for all. And the individual struggling today cannot wait for conversations around public transit, cannot wait for conversations around education. They need help today, tonight. They need help.
Look,
We're going to have to move
all
on.
I'll say, I need to just add
give her
one
a
point,
chance to
which is
respond.
that I'm not exactly sure which conversations my colleague is referring to, but every time that I go into a conversation or a meeting, I leave with action steps. That is why, in terms of the legislation passed, the number of fights that we've taken on and successfully won, there's no comparison between what we have each gotten done in terms of the delivery and results. I have been leading the charge in partnership with community to deliver Boston's first free bus route that Mayor Janey has been an incredible partner and leader on. I have led the way in making sure that cities across the Commonwealth are talking about transportation access that is necessary for all of our residents. We are in a moment of crisis. We cannot just continue to point fingers and say what is not possible. I know that when Boston takes on the big fights, we get things done because I've done it time and again on transportation, on driving down rents by closing loopholes for Airbnb and big companies, on delivering paid parental leave for city workers, on ensuring equity in city contracts, on changes in our climate and renewable energy. I am proud of the work that I've been able to get done on the City Council because it's important to hear from residents, to talk, to be in community, and then to follow up, not point fingers, but get things done.
Adrian?
Councilor Asabi George, your husband is a developer whose companies own 55 properties in Boston with an assessed value of $54 million, according to a recent report in the Globe. Maintaining that work requires dealing with departments that report to the mayor constantly on issues ranging from the designations with the BPDA to code enforcement to tax abatement to all kinds of other things. You said that your husband will stop doing business in the city if you're elected, but he has many projects going on already. How can this be anything but a constant conflict of interest for a mayor?
So it's been widely reported on my husband's business here in the city of Boston and the business that he has built well over 30 years here. I will say very clearly that I have filed a request with the Ethics Commission and suggested my recommendation, because I know as mayor of this city, I will be held to a high standard, and we have gone above and beyond the Ethics Commission's recommendation. My husband will do no new business before the city. I will hire an abuds person to guide any of his projects through, whether we put in a new bathroom in our home or repair the front steps. That permit process will be guided by an abuds person. And I appreciate that I will be held to a high standard as mayor of the city of Boston. Both of us should be held to a very high standard if we want to lead this city, if we want to do the work for the residents of this city of Boston. And I certainly hope that Michelle here will also lead with that same transparency.
Councilor Wolf.
I absolutely will. My husband and I have proactively released our tax returns for our family, unlike my colleague here, and we've made sure that in everything that I do, we are clear. And we own one home in Roslindale. I live upstairs with my husband and two boys. My mom lives downstairs. That is the extent of our real estate holdings. I've led the way on the council in filing and passing legislation for disclosure from lobbyists and ensuring that we are always upholding ethics and accountability in city government.
Councilor Sabi-George, you mentioned your tax. You have not released your tax returns?
Oh, I've released my tax returns.
You've released.
I have.
But will you release your husband's tax
Will you release
returns?
your husband?
I've released my tax returns.
And you will never release his?
His business has been widely reported on. Feel free to check out the Boston Globe. They've shared quite a bit.
All right, there's been a great deal of conversation about free transit in this campaign, so I'd like to talk tonight actually about traffic alleviation.
Oh, I'd love to talk about free transit. Come on now.
We're doing traffic alleviation. What is one thing you can do, and Councilor Wu, this will come to you first, to meaningfully alleviate traffic in your first 12 months in office?
When I joined the council, the overwhelming feeling was that we should not touch transportation issues because this was the realm of the state, the MBTA and the Department of Transportation. But as I made my way from Roslindale to downtown every day, seeing the racial injustices and inequities across our transportation options, seeing the traffic that builds up, spending time in Chinatown, which is the most polluted census tract anywhere in the state because of the highways ringing around the neighborhood filled with traffic and cars, we need to take action. The city has power to create dedicated bus lanes, as I've advocated for and it made sure happened all across the city. That will help speed up our bus routes, improve the reliability of public transportation, also ensure that we are investing in multimodal transit options with bike lanes, with pedestrian safety. We should ensure that every time that we are leaning in for a development project, that transportation access is part of that conversation. And we do need to talk about making public transportation reliable and affordable for our residents.
You've just said bike lanes, bus lanes, pedestrian safety. Which of those would you deliver in the first 12 months?
All of those.
Councilor Sabi-George.
I really wish we could have a conversation about Michelle's priority to free the T. When we think about the complications that exist today with the T, with service hours being cut, with greater investments being needed, when we think about the infrastructure and it crumbling and people being hurt and injured and sometimes killed, I'm not sure why we've now walked away from that conversation. Absolutely, as mayor of the city, we will work towards fare, free bus rides, especially connecting some of our most disadvantaged communities to workforce opportunities, to school opportunities. That's very important. But the conversation around transportation, generally in this debate, in this forum, in this and these discussions, circles around Michelle's priority to free the T. And when we think about that investment, that cost, that challenge, that burden will be put on the backs of our city's residents. And we know that it's a $2.3 billion investment, if not much more when we think about the debt and the further investment needed.
So, Councilor, that $2.3 billion is the entire budget of the MBTA. Prior to the pandemic, roughly about 30% of their budget came in fares. So the real number would be more like $700 million.
I actually disagree with you. The real number is in the billions of dollars. When we think about the delayed investment, when we think about the need to increase and expand services, especially for our shift workers, especially for those that are working off hours, we need greater investment in the T. not this walking away from it and calling it free, and then who pays for it?
So I'm going to stay with you.
The people of Boston will pay for it.
I'm going to stay with you first. There is a difference between long-term capital improvement dollars and fare dollars, but more to the point, a significant percentage of Boston residents as pedestrians or motor vehicle operators care also about traffic congestion.
Yes.
So something you will do in the first 12 months to alleviate traffic congestion.
We certainly have to continue to invest in those fare-free bus lines. We've seen the success with the number 28. That's cost the city $30 million, and that pilot ends in just a couple of weeks. We have to look for opportunities to extend that. We also need to understand the investment that is needed around some of our lower wage workers, our seniors, and certainly continue with our investment in student passes, because although that bus line is free, when they transfer to a rail line, there's an added cost. We've got a lot of work to do, but putting the burden on the backs of Bostonians isn't the right move.
Councilor Wu, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to some of the charges we've just heard.
Sure. I think I'll be glad to just adjust the numbers a little bit, and maybe this will make my colleague feel a little better, because for the one bus line in Boston that is free, the 28 bus, which runs from Mattapan Square through Grove Hall, through Nubian Station to Ruggles, this has been a $500,000 investment by the City of Boston in partnership with the MBTA to run this line and to manage it and understand the data. $30 million is the cost for the entire bus system to replace the fares that would come of this. But we would actually save even more. The MBTA itself has said that if we were to allow everyone to board from all doors, not slowing down to get your wallets out, uncrinkle the bills and have to pay, that in and of itself would save $29 million annually in cost efficiencies. We are spending money collecting fares right now, and it is on the shoulders of our residents who can least afford it. It is playing out in racial injustices across the city. 64 hours more per year that black bus riders spend on our buses compared to their white counterparts. This is not a situation where we can sit back. I'm not walking away from any conversation. I'm hopping on the train, I'm hopping on the bus. I am a regular MBTA rider. And if you're on the T every day, you know that this is an issue that is critical and foundational to our families' day-to-day lives.
That $500,000 is for a 3-month pilot. So if I do quick back of the envelope, we're talking about more like $2 million for a single year. Are those sustainable dollars over time? That's one bus line.
We did overpay for that pilot. I'm sorry to report. I put out a roadmap and an estimate of 3 different bus lines that should be about $5 million to expand the pilot. These routes would represent the routes that carry the most riders, routes that have first responders, that serve predominantly residents of color. We should start there, expanding this pilot, and then push for a fare-free system. There's already legislation up at the State House today that would ensure free buses across the entire state. A $60 million investment for the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts would transform people's lives. I'm proud of my advocacy on this front because we've already seen results, not just the 28 bus in Boston. The city of Lawrence, since we have been pushing for free public transportation, has made their bus system free. The city of Worcester has taken votes. Brockton has free weekend bus. We have seen it happen because of city leadership in partnership with the state.
Councilor Wu, thank you. We're going to
I
speak.
still haven't heard an answer to how we're going to pay for freeing the MBTA. When I think about the work that we need to do as a city, when I think about the work that we need to do for the residents of Boston, the fare-free bus lines are a conversation and work that we need to explore to do. But freeing the T is a very different conversation, and we have to think about what happens with our residents when they change lines. I want to understand the work around freeing the T, and I want to understand then if Michelle thinks it's no longer possible to free the T, are we now backstepping from promises you've made to the people of Boston? The people of Boston deserve an honest answer around the promise to free the T.
Councilor Wu, can you answer the question?
I'm happy to help you understand freeing the T anytime. We can talk more.
The people of Boston need to understand it.
I'd love
Michelle,
to
it's a
finish
commitment
answering
you've
this
made.
question. The resources that are available are not just within the city budget. I'm proud to have partnered and worked with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, Senator Ed Markey, as they filed federal legislation that would generate billions of dollars for transit agencies across the country to offer fare-free transportation. Both of those leaders, as well as Senator Elizabeth Warren, have endorsed my campaign, are standing with our vision of transportation that is reliable, accessible, and yes, affordable to all. This is part of Boston's legacy. Just as we invested to make public education free, became the first city in the country to do so, just as we made public parks and libraries free, Public transportation is a public good. We should all be able to access it.
We could devote the entire debate to this subject. We're going to move on just a little bit, change things up here a little bit. Councilor Rasabi George, this question is first for you. This is a lightning round, so yes or no, one sentence, ready, here we go. Councilor Rasabi George, this is to you. Would you shop at a cannabis store?
No.
Councilor Wu?
No.
Next question. Do you have strict rules, and this is for, Councilor Wu, we'll start with you. Do you have strict rules for your kids for watching TV or playing video games?
No.
That was the regrettable.
Well, I have rules, but they're not always enforced, especially during debate nights.
Councilor Rasabi George.
We did, and then COVID came, so those rules have gone out the window, trying to rein them in just a little bit.
Adrian?
This question is for Councilor Rasabi George. A Federal Reserve study in 2013 found that white families in Boston had a net worth of $247,500 versus $8 for African American families. The pandemic has done nothing to make that better. In fact, it has only exacerbated inequality. As mayor, what would you do to move those numbers?
Well, we've seen the devastation of those numbers and the impact it has on our families, in particular our black families at $8 and our Latino families at $0. We need to create opportunities for home ownership. We know that that asset is so important. We need to also make sure that our families of color in the city have access to the workforce and opportunities to earn a higher income. It's the work that I've rolled out, my Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Plan. It's the work that I'm committed to doing and starting the first day as mayor of this great city.
Councilor Wu.
Boston is one of the most unequal cities anywhere in the country, and that gap is made up of ownership, disparities across race when it comes to home ownership and business ownership. Boston cannot have a thriving business community without a thriving black business community. And I've led the way on the council, starting from 5 years ago, partnering with then Councilor Ayanna Pressley to ensure that the very first step we could take within city power that we were doing to have equity in city contracts. We spend more than $660 million a year on contracts. And when it's 1.2% going to Black and Latinx owned businesses, that is dollars that we are sending out the door. We need to ensure that there's a clear plan for directing and supporting our local businesses, boosting home ownership, closing these gaps, and I'll work with our community organizations as we already have to continue this progress.
We have reached the point for closing statements. You each have a minute, but Councilor Rasabi George actually won the decision on that one. She chose to go last, so Councilor Wu, you get the first closing statement.
Thank you so much for having us here, and thank you again to everyone for hanging in with us. We are now just days away from a historic election in Boston, and I'm someone who is running for mayor to take on the big challenges. We've all seen and lived through such devastation during the pandemic. This is the moment for Boston to step up and do big things to address the challenges that we have. As a mom, I wake up every day thinking about the future of our city, the future of our kids, and what we are leaving for them. I'll make sure that I bring my track record of 10 years in City Hall, first working for Mayor Menino, now 8 years on the City Council, knowing that we can accomplish big things when we all are at the table. And so I'm asking for your vote on November 2nd so that we can all be part of shaping Boston's future. Now is the moment to step up and ensure that we are investing in the big, bold solutions that our city deserves.
Councilor Rasabi George.
I'm grateful to have the opportunity to draw some distinctions. When we think about our city's historical moment, we have to think about our city's future. I look forward to serving as your mayor. It's the work that I want to do for the city of Boston. And this work can be messy, it can be hard, it can be complicated, but it's necessary that your mayor step up and do the work, especially for our most vulnerable communities. When we think about the lack of access and opportunity our communities of color have had around home ownership, around small business investment, around education, I will do more as your mayor. When we think about the challenges our seniors face, our veterans face, our LGBT community, and our ADA community, the challenges are real. I will be the mayor to do this work with you and for you. I am grateful that my parents, both immigrants to this country, made Boston their home. I look forward to serving as your mayor.
I would like to thank both of you for coming here tonight and engaging each other tonight. I would love to have you meet in the middle and shake hands. I'm not going to do that, so don't even think twice about that. Well, because of COVID, I'm not going to have you violate the space and do it. Fist bump or another. But it was great to have both of you with us. And guys, terrific questions and a wonderful job here for us. Councilor Wu, Councilor Rasabi George, it is wonderful to have you with us this evening. And thank you to the panelists, too, for presenting an interesting topic of conversation. Remember, early voting is already underway. So you can vote already. Election Day is a week from tomorrow. It is November 2nd. Cast your vote. Use your voice loud and proud. Decide the future of your city. Good night, everyone.